Hi, everybody. JB back again with my Did You Ever Wonder series, episode 22, Fayetteville's Old City Hospital. This was Mayor Jordan asked me if I would do a quick video about the old hospital, and I was happy to do this. The This is a picture of the original Old City Hospital. And there's probably people out there, hopefully, that are watching this that were actually born in that old hospital. Anyway, so it was a beautiful thing there down on South School, right before South Street. Uh, it's just an absolutely lovely thing. I've always joked when I did the Fayetteville expansion of the library, if this building had still been there instead of the one that came later, I would have chained myself to it to keep from tearing it down, but it was already gone by then. So anyway, so let's just take a quick look at the older history of the city hospital. There we go, a little slow moving there. Okay, so that land that it was on was belonged to at the time Stephen K. and Amanda Stone. You've probably heard me talk about them before. Mr. Stone was probably the richest man, given inflation and time and everything that ever lived in Fayetteville, the most successful entrepreneur. So in 1906, they deeded the land in Block 37, which is that lower part there where the Fayetteville expansion has occurred, most of it, and I'll show you that. Now here's an old plat map of the city of Block 37. If you see over here on the right, it says Public Square. You go straight down between Center and Mountain, and coming after you go down Mountain rather from the square. 34 is where the library was built, the one that just got expanded. That's the block right there. The expansion, most of it goes into this 37 right here, and that was the land that was owned and deeded by the Stone family. The person who built this Fayetteville City Hospital is Albert M. Burns, and it was built I think there were different phases, but 1911, 1912 was the main construction. It was dedicated in 1912. I will be devoting an entire episode to Mr. Burns later on. He built Fayetteville basically in the years from the mid 1880s to the 1920 range or so. He built 300 to 400 buildings. So I'm going to talk about him later on. And then one of the people, the most important people in the city hospital history is Ruth Riley, the nurse. She was the city hospital administrator from 1912 to 1957. If my math is working good, that's 45 years. Extremely impressive. Anyway, so those are a couple of people involved in the early history of the hospital. And here's some old-time doctors, and it'll be kind of hard. I got this from W.S. Campbell's 100 Years of Fayetteville. I'm just going to point out some of them. This guy on the corner is T.J. Pollard. He was one of the early doctors. Next to him is S.F. Paddock. That's the guy from Paddock's Corner. Remember I talked about the square? It was on the south end of the east side. It was called Paddock's Corner. And this is the third guy in there is W.N. Yates. And if you've seen my presentations on the 1918 influenza, he was on the City Board of Health then. He was a secretary, as I recall. On the second row on the far left, that's another picture of Miss Riley. And then there's the beautiful old hospital. And if we drop down the next row, the second guy in there with the big beard and mustache, that's A.S. Gregg. That's one of Lafayette Gregg's sons. W.B. Welch, then with the big white beard, one of the first doctors at the hospital, one of the main leaders. And this guy over here is Odie Miller, who had just passed the year before the book came out this is from 1928, and he died in September, I think, of 1927. And then the only other person, well, there's E.F. Ellis down here, I should mention him at the far right. He was administrator or lead doctor. I'm not getting the right term here at the hospital for a long time, E.F. Ellis. And then the second guy in down here on this last row, my cursor won't get over there for me. This guy right here, that's P.L. Hathcock. I'm pretty sure a lot of people have heard of him. I don't remember if he was a baby doctor, but he's a well-known doctor. So that's just some of the old-time doctors that were at the old hospital back in the day. And what they did, because all the nurses, they built a home in 1915 for the nurses to actually live in that worked there. And I'm not sure exactly where on the grounds this was. Maybe to the back right would be sort of to the west, northwest of the hospital, I think. Anyway, in 1929, there were enough nurses, they actually built another annex. So this is the completed nurses' home after post-1929. Now I'm going to give you a real short timeline. I'll try to hustle through this so it's not too long. But in 1924, I know they had over 1,000 X-ray patients, and that's significant because only the year before the X-ray machine had been donated to the city hospital by Julia Baum, who was the wife of Moses Baum, one of the Baum brothers who had this store on the square for decades and decades. And she had just done that in 23, and she actually passed in 24. Anyway, in 1934, the nurses' school was discontinued. In 39, the first Iron Lung was a city hospital. Remember the polio vaccination? There you go. 1940, the hospital was at nearest capacity of 55 beds. This is now we're going into World War II. In 1941, they increased the capacity to 74. And in 42, there were 415 berths at City Hospital. I've just picking out some things that might be of interest. 1944, the miracle drug penicillin was introduced. You guys might have known me personally, know that as a kid I was sick and penicillin kept me going. Trust me, I had a lot of that. 1945, by 1945, they're suggesting we need another hospital, a county hospital, 100 bed. And so in 1950, there you go. The Washington County Hospital is built over there on North Street. The basic building is still there. It expanded over time, but it's there. And it was built by, or designed by, at least, Paul Young Jr., the architect, who also did the UARK Theater and the UARK Bowl for W.F. Sonneman a couple of years before this. He's the father of my friend Bob Young, who works out at Evergreen Cemetery and other cemeteries, restoring the gravestones and so forth. Some more little timeline stuff. In 1959, the new city hospital, if you will, the one that was just torn down, was begun. They started building it over the old one. In 1961, the Washington County Hospital was changed to Washington General Hospital. In 62, the nurses' home was torn down. And in 73, Washington General became Washington Regional Medical Center. And in 1982, the old hospital was torn down there on South Street, added a geriatric wing and named it after James Hoover, a World War I veteran who had become a beloved figure for all the work and help he did at the hospital for decades. And also as the Golden Bricks campaign, where you could pay, I've forgotten the number, $100 some have a golden brick. I think they're in individual possession right now. I couldn't find a whole lot about it, but it'd be really cool to see some of them. And then in 1983, the rest of the old beautiful hospital that I loved so much was removed. And then from 59 on, I think they did earlier incarnations of it, but from 59 on, the attic thrift shop, I'm sure a lot of you remember that, it was a part of the hospital auxiliary. And there's an attic thrift shop down on South School now, on past what used to be the roller rink, City Lumber now, on past there. I don't know if it's still part of the hospital auxiliary. Somebody let me know about that. Anyway, this is a Christian church. It's gone now. It's with the Fayetteville Library expansion, got rid of it. They used to face rock over here on the right, and I took a picture of it. It was the attic thrift shop from 82 to 1990. I just like to take pictures of this old church. It was built back in the 40s. It had a couple of interesting features about it. I'm glad I took pictures before it was raised. And of course, in 2002, the Washington Regional Medical Center was opened out there, the big, beautiful, high-tech place. And this is a picture of what I call the new hospital. A lot of people call it the old hospital. This is the new city hospital, right before the expansion, right before it was torn down. I was lucky enough the library let me go in with some of them, and we toured all through in there. It was fascinating to see some of the old stuff, but that was just completely taken out, and that's what's there now. Where the hospital and the church used to be is the big, huge expansion part of the Fayetteville Public Library. And that's 2021. And I believe that, folks, is just a real quick look at some of the history of the old city hospital. Like I said, I bet you some of you folks were actually born there in the old one, and probably others in the newer old one, if you will. Anyway, so let me do my thing where I try to stop the recording. And so that was in episode 22. And I'll be back. The next one is going to be on street names. There's so many street names to talk about. I've done 2 videos of those, but the first one of those will be the next episode. So as usual, thank you very much for sticking with me. And I appreciate it very much. And I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.